you kind of want to do what your older brother's doing. But, opportunities to play with him were kind of few and far between, just because he's 6 years my senior and didn't really, playing with your 6-year younger brother isn't the first thing on your mind when you're at high school. So the few times that he would play with me, I could sense the annoyance or whatever, or the fact that he had to slow down his game. But just observing him, in that one way, he's a tenor, so he also colored my ear as far as growing up in the same house as a professional singer. I picked up a love for the game myself, kind of taught it to myself. Actually, I took some lessons at Seattle Tennis Center and things of that nature, but it's not brain surgery. So I think I did the same sort of thing, practice on the same garage. And when it came time to naming myself, I think my first DJ name was something like B Cause, something corny, like B dash Cause. Actually, I think I have a beat tape that says that it has DJ B Cause on it. But that shifted to topspin, probably sometime in the high school era. Once I started dabbling or fashioning myself as a DJ, I chose topspin, just so double entendre. The thought process is one of the top DJs, as well as someone who could give you this tennis work. Topspin forehand. Topspin. That's how you hit it forehand and backhand. So double entendre.
And then when did Blendiana Jones? Because when we were growing up, I don't remember you being Blendiana Jones until like after.
No, Blendiana Jones was developed as just the same sort of thing. Hip hop's, AKA this, AKA that. He was like Wu-Tang, with people have 3, 4, 5 names or whatever. But blending, harmonic blends that you find with your ear versus software have always been my jam. From my first mixtapes, my first 3 or 4 mixtapes had blend in the title, like from beginning to blend. All good things must come to a blend. The blend result, the blend of time, things of that nature. But around, this is what, 2023, maybe?
Right.
The contour era, maybe like 08, 09, somewhere thereabouts. I did a mixtape with my man Omari Salisbury of Converge Media, but he's always been a marketing guy and able to sell anything or direct people's attention certain places. His marketing firm was called Definition Marketing, but back then he got into the cell phone business and had Definition Wireless, which is a wireless phone store on 23rd and Jackson, in the Promenade, when the Promenade 23 was still open. And we did a mixtape, a promotional mixtape for the store, called The Definition. We actually did 2 of them. Definition, the first one, and then Definition 2.0. And the 2.0 was where I introduced myself as Blendiana Jones. I think I was thinking of, things to add on. And back then that was the era too of post or the Rockefeller, Jay-Z, Big, Usher, the button-up era type of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And hats, fedoras. I was fashioning myself with fedoras at the time. And somebody caught me with a picture. I was wearing a gray polo and a gray fedora, and it was like that. And it was just a good shot. And Damon, Creative Lou, Vitamin D's cousin, who I have worked with extensively since I was in high school. He actually taught me how to work Photoshop and things of that nature. He did the cover for that Definition 2.0 mixtape, and he kind of superimposed me in this foliage in the shape of Washington State, and it had these sunbeams, and it really had this whole I think I probably just came up him. I mean, I probably told him I was trying to go the AKA Indiana Jones kind of thing, and he, I think actually, I think he came up with the logo first, because the logo looks like the Indiana Jones logo with the orange faded text. It just says Indiana Jones. I think he had developed that first, and then when it was a definition 2.0, he did a whole cover that kind of broadened that whole concept. It just went from text to this whole visual spiel, and it really seemed to extend the memorability of me, with all these pseudonyms and whatnot. People ask me, what do you call you? Barry, Topsman, Blendiana? Like, I'm like, whatever you remember, whatever sticks the most to you.
Right.
Blendiana has stuck a lot to people,
One of the things I will say about you, Top, is that your creativity definitely ages well. Some of us don't have that ability, but the Top Spin definitely ages well. Blendiana Jones is definitely going to age well. It's teetering on a dead joke, but it's still good.
You see teeter on a dad joke?
Yeah, it's teetering on there. Like,
dad jokes are a tad more. Dad jokes.
Yeah, what do you call Indiana Jones if he was the DJ? Come on, man.
Dad jokes have more of a punchline. A cheesy punchline, but
no, but it's good.
It's all to each his own. But I'll let you know that it's very memorable.
I'm giving you a prop. It does. It has good. It has good. It's going to age well.
It also speaks to a person of a certain generation too.
Right.
As time goes on. Luckily, Indiana Jones movies just made another movie. But if that didn't happen, I'm sure it was on its way to fading in obscurity.
But another one of your genius names with Stan Power was, now I don't know if you came up with it or not. You might have to correct me on the history, because I'm learning too with this interview. Is Sinsemilla.
Sinsemilla, actually, that's the group in Tribal Productions. I co-founded with Vitamin.
We're gonna talk about that. But who came up with that name?
Sinsemilla Hussein.
Okay.
My partner.
Shout out to
at that
Hussein.
point. At that time, it was a trio. It was myself, Hussein, Kalonji goes by H-Bomb professionally, and Infinite, my man Francis.
Yeah,
Sinsemilla was originally a trio,
right.
And back then it was weed and BDs and things of that nature, and Hussein was like the weed guy or whatever. And as far as knowing X, Y, and Z about it, and he was like it meant like marijuana without seeds, and it just sounded fly. It's like,
no, it's dope. It's the female section of the plant, right?
Yeah. And
mm-hmm.
Like I said, back then I was novice. His suggestion was like, oh, okay, that's kind of cool. And it had a ring to it.
Yeah, it's dope.
It has a staying power. So yeah, I try to align myself with things that have staying power.
One of the things I do is, I definitely pride myself in being a Pisces, and I always look at the zodiac sign and be like, man, we got all Pisces roster. We would have looked like Queen Latifah and Timberland. Who was it? Tyler the Creator. I can go on, and I'd be like, man, that's a tight little group, man. Yeah, but there's no way in the world we're beating Gemini.
With what?
Gemini, man. Y'all are stacked. Y'all are stacked. Y'all are stacked.
Oh, as far as what could be created?
Man. Yeah. Andre 3000, Kendrick Lamar, Ice Cube, Killer Mike, Lauryn Hill, Biggie. I'm like,
I think Prince is in there too.
Yeah.
I won't be the one to lay claim or ownership, but yes, Geminis are powerful artists. They say we are, multifaceted,
ambidextrous.
Ambidextrous in a lot of respects. Multi personalities. Some, depending on who you ask. There's plenty of sides to us, and they're oftentimes polar opposite. There's things that I appreciate on one end, and I can equally appreciate the complete opposite end. On a number of things.
Right.
I roll the punches. I'm thankful. I was born when I was born. No one has control of it. So you just gotta treat whatever lands on you as a blessing.
Speaking of when you were born, that's a good segue. What's the genesis story of Top Blendiana Jones? Where your parents from? I always like to ask that. And where were you born and things of that nature. I'm a migrant. I'm born in Cleveland, raised in Cincinnati. Came here when I was like 12. Mm-hmm. But what's your genesis story? Where your parents from?
My mother is from Panama. My father's from Jamaica. They came here in '68, independent. Well, actually one another, but sort of at the same time, and met in Seventh-day Adventist Church. They originally lived out near Northgate, like 105th or something like that, and were introduced by mutual friends at Green Lake Church, where they attended. And my brother was born in 1969. So as my mother was studying, what's she studying? Well, I know she came here for, I think, English, because she was an English teacher at Seattle Central Community College before she went on to work for the state or county, rather. She worked for King County for quite some time in various departments. First, she was a budget analyst, and then she worked for a segment called BALD, Building and Land Development, where she was in charge of allotting money to enough, or basically making sure the dollars were being allotted to Black contractors as well, or people of color. Probably more pointed Black back then. But my father worked, I believe he was in Root, or his lane of study, I believe, was law. I think he took the bar but didn't pass and somehow got discouraged. The stories vary depending on who's telling it, and ultimately ended up working for Seattle Times for a long period of time. Actually, he was a composer, which is the person who puts things in order. And back then it was a very manual discipline as far as just like how the articles are lined up for the pictures. And, he would do special stuff like print us our custom newspapers for your birthday, like happy birthday. But it'd be a Seattle Times template. It looks like a real newspaper kind of a thing. So that's the parent story as far as, they met late 60s, have my brother.
Where's your dad from?
My dad's from Jamaica.
Okay. Yeah, so you got both parents from the Caribbean.
Yeah. So my dad's from Jamaica, and like I said, they were pretty staunch Seventh-day Adventists. So go to church on Saturday. Were raised in a household that didn't really prioritize, secular music of the day. Like I said, I have a brother and sister. We're all separated by 3 years. I'm the youngest. So my brother was born 69. Sister 72, me 75. So being born into a household, like a Christian household. So the music of the household is kind of mainly religious, but elements of funkiness. I remember records like James Brown on Black and I'm Proud, the James Brown Christmas album. But not a whole bunch of stuff that would ultimately, be like the building blocks of hip hop as far as samples and, the Parliaments and the funk bands and the R&B of the day. I
don't know, man. You go back to a lot of those 70s gospel albums like Supreme Jubilee and
gospel was definitely in the house.
Man, they got some samples, bro.
For sure. And my sister's name is Mahalia. She was named after Mahalia Jackson. Mm-hmm. And even speaking of gospel, like my first, I remember a lot of things as a kid too. Like I remember Rapper's Delight dropping and that being in the house as a record, kind of next to these other records, the odd record out. Remember that big, the Sugar Hill jacket, the big baby blue jacket and the baby blue label with the candy cane stripe lettering. And, that was popular today, but that's just one record, and we weren't in New York, so it wasn't like hip hop was. I was being flooded with hip hop directly thereafter. I was, like I said, raised in the house with gospel music, so there's a lot of Mahalia Jackson, Andre Crouch, particularly.
I was going to mention that.
Billy Preston, Andre Crouch, people who come from secular spaces. A lot of gospel is former secular musicians, so they bring that funk with them to the church. And I remember listening to a particular piece of an Andre Crouch record called "You Don't Know What You're Missing," I think, until you meet the Lord. And there was this little turnaround part that was just this little funky little riff. I was just like, I remember, like my first sort of hip hop thought and movement was like picking up the needle and keep on playing that one little piece. Like I just really dug it. But this is before any thoughts of hip hop construction or how to manipulate it, or even the thought to manipulate it. This is still late 70s.
So you grow up in this Christian Seventh-day Adventist household, with two parents, that came to the United States, how did you just basically transition and evolve to this hip hop art? I thought it was always Vitamin and Demisi that were the two co-creators of Tribal. It was you and Vitamin. Talk about how that got started. Because I have a quick story for you real quick. I remember me and my homeboy Boney B, Rob Warren, aka Chow now. He's still doing his thing. Shout out.
Shout out to Chow. He's still ill.
We met at O'Day, and it was his idea. He said, "Man, I got this sample. It was that more bounce. It was called Who's the Man?" So we started rocking it. We killed the talent show. We started doing this one song. We were a one-trick pony,
right?
And my homeboy Leroy was like, Jerome, my bad, was like, "Man, you guys is tight, man, but I think you got these cat over at Garfield." And I went to he skipped school and went to Purple and White Day. And
Garfield had its allure.
Yeah, and he was like, "Man, these guys need to call Ghetto Children." This guy was scratching and doing all this other stuff. And I was like, "Man, I gotta catch them, man. You know what I'm saying? I gotta catch them, see what they're about." And sure enough, I was like, "Man, these guys are dope."
Do you remember what year that was?
It had to be, I think, 92, I think.
Yeah, I got to Garfield at 90. Well, yeah, the fall of 91.
Okay. So you didn't go to Garfield your freshman and sophomore year?
Pardon?
You didn't go to Garfield your freshman and sophomore year?
No, I'll break down my whole schooling trajectory too, because it was quite varied as well.
Okay, yeah,
and related to the Seventh-day Adventist
gotcha. Yeah,
trajectory, or just who I was meeting in Seventh-day Adventist circles.
Yeah. So I mean, talk about how you made that evolution and that transition to like, man, I really want to do this hip hop stuff.
I'll answer your question in a couple, I guess, of different ways. I guess that's a good purpose of these talks, because even I've noticed over time, for a long time, there's parts of different stories that are either omitted. Not even omitted. A lot of our motion was pre-internet, so the stories are varied from the people who experienced them, and there's all kind of narratives, and even you're thinking that Demisi came up with some, or Vitamin and Demisi. Like I said, my schooling, I went all over the place. One raised in Seattle, Mount Baker neighborhood. So the schools that I'm closest to, elementary is John Muir, and high school is Franklin. I went to John Muir, kindergarten. Kindergarten. I went to a Christian school that my brother and sister were going to in the North End, called Christa, first grade. Second through fourth, I went to Madrona. Fifth and sixth, I went to St. Therese, primarily because my next door neighbor was my best friend, Zach. He was just a homie. He was a mixed kid in a house where the mother worked at a adoption agency. The dad was an architect. The mom worked at an adoption agency. So they had two biological children, Sarah and Nick, and a rest of a full house full of adopted children. Not that it was a revolving cast. It was Zach. I forgot where he was actually from, but he had a brother, Len, who was from Korea. A sister, Amy. She was also mixed. Another sister, Emily. She was also from Korea. I want to say even Korean Black mixed. Both Len and Emily. Amy. I said Amy. And another, I want to say perhaps from Cambodia. His name was Leng, Leng. Anyway, Zach and I were really the homies, kind of got together just during kids. He's just my best friend next door. We're kicking it, playing with G.I. Joes, playing with Hot Wheels, getting into all the things that are emerging, and at that particular time it's pop music, where it's MTV 80s, so it's Michael Jackson, it's Herbie Hancock, it's Rocket, it's all these different types of music. As a matter of fact, it's
a whole bunch of white folks that can sing from the UK too.
Yeah, I mean it's the MTV era, so
yeah,
it's Europop, it's Depeche Mode, it's Wham, all that type of thing. But Nick, the eldest and biological son of the next door neighbors, Margie and Dan were the parents. Nick was a little nerdy kid. He looked like the kid in the Christmas Story, the glasses. But he's growing, and he's a music fan, and he's also becoming more and more of a Prince fan, as Prince is sort of the Prince wave is pretty strong, early mid 80s. I'm a few years removed, so it's not really hitting me in the same sort of a way, but. He lived next door, and he was the first person I encountered with a pair of turntables, like an actual DJ setup. It was like two belt drive black turntables with dust covers and a mixer.
Of course, they were belt drive. Right?
Yeah, I mean, yes, I mean belt drive versus direct drive. Technique 1200s, the DJ standard is a wheel of steel. Belt drives are more plastic. They have a belt and they're super wobbly. So, wobbly as far as for the purpose of scratching. Although it was a DJ setup, like I said, he had a crossfader, two turntables. But we never. I don't think I ever saw him even play a record. Maybe play a record, but he also was like a fan of like his record collection. His little crate of records in his room as a teenager consisted of the Beach Boys. Elvis, he's probably, he's informed by his parents, obviously. But then, Prince, things of that nature, probably some Phil Collins or something like that, as that stuff is growing, but he's not in any sort of hip hop trajectory necessarily. And even at that particular point, outside of Rapper's Delight, which is late 70s, the next sort of hip hop blip that I remember, remember is fuzzy because I'm thinking perhaps this is elementary school, I remember second grade being at Madrona, hearing stuff like da ha da ha da ha 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 ha. Yeah, that. Yeah, and even the local stuff, I guess it's a few years later, but Buttermilk Biscuits, early Mix-a-Lot stuff before before Posse on Broadway, but mostly, second grade, I remember, that's mostly pop. So actually, I do have a memory of us getting pulled out of class and having an assembly to watch like the making of Thriller. So that was the time frame, but also that's also the time frame of like Rocket, Herbie Hancock Rocket. And that's really the first time I see you know, and hear a DJ, you know, in some super duper memorable cadence. And it's like, that was like the star of that song. And to see that on stage, and I believe early videos too. I remember the video had the mechanized robot, you know, torsos and legs, and even had Mixmaster DST, you know, Herbie Hancock had the keytar, and they kind of fashioned the DJ setup as a on your chest DJ thing. So he's DJing in the video like on his stomach, but you see it's a record. You see it's a fader. You don't know what a fader is, but she's making these distinct noises in a pattern, and it's a record. And it's like, wow, he's really moving a record. And like I said, the only references for records I have is the records we have in the house. Not to mention that what we play it on is a big cabinet speaker, you know, big cabinet radio system. It's about 5 feet wide, a big old door that hinges up, and a turntable to the right, sunken down in it. And it was the hi-fi audio of the day, you know, with the automated, you know, you used to be able to stack, you know, 4 records on it or whatever, however many records you want, and it would play a record all the way to the end, and then it would sense when it's at the end and come back and drop the next record. And so I'm getting familiar with records, but I'm introduced to something to do with them, and that I don't know how to emulate, because I don't have the on the tummy system. I don't have a fader, but I see this guy moving this record around, pushing this record around, and even in being informed from the next door neighbor's DJ setup, I don't notice anything, or I don't know any concept of like a slip mat, or, you know, how would I make this record slippery enough for me to manipulate? So essentially, you know, probably behind both Rocket and, essentially Rocket, I'm kind of trying to teach myself how to scratch. You know, you do the kid thing, and you want to emulate. But this is also coming from behind, you know, being like a break dancer first, because that's the popular thing too. Hip hop is emerging, and you know, it's aligned with the Michael Jackson sort of a thing. You know, there's Alfonso Ribeiro, Pepsi commercials, you know, Beat Street, Electric Boogaloo.
There's a lot of intersections. A lot of intersections.
So, you know, I'm actively breakdancing with my friend Zach, you know, outside, you know, on either refrigerator boxes, or I remember a specific piece of like a spare piece of linoleum. I don't know if it was like from some renovation they did to their house, but we had access to like this nice size square of linoleum, which was better than cardboard as far as getting a spin on. So, you know, I'm a dancer first. Break dancer first. I'm a break dancer first, and then, like I said, the DJ side starts to creep in societally, you know, from something like Rocket, and then I remember going back to the cabinet system, and, you know, and like scratching a record on top of a record just to try to get the, you know, I mean, because I don't know what a slip mat is. I don't know how they're making the record slippery enough to move. So I'm scratching whatever record on top of another record just so I can move it. But I'm also, the volume knob is over here. I'm right-handed. The turntable's over here, but down. The volume knob is over here, but down. So I'm scratching and turning a knob. Like, I'm figuring out what a fader does.
I told you, man, I'm Gemini, ambidextrous, man. I'm telling you, man.
And what a fader does is it exposes and it hides part of the audio. Like if a DJ were to just move a record back and forth, you would hear every push and pull. Or even the pattern of DST when he's doing his scratches on Rocket is chip, chip, chew it, chip, 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 chew it. But the fact that it's chirping is the fact that he's taking out basically the pull. There's an artistic way of exposing sound and hiding sound. That's how you can mix up and create patterns when you're DJing. But I don't have a fader. I have a volume knob. So I'm doing this. It's not pushing and pulling and twisting. I'm definitely not getting as crisp as his pattern, but I'm teaching myself the mechanics of how scratching might work if I had a system. from that point, technology's developing. I forget if it was a gift for the family or just my brother, but the stacked systems enters the house at some point. I believe the brand, there were many brands, but I remember the brand that ours was Yorks, Yorx. It was like one of these cheaper Japanese brands that wasn't Sony or Panasonic.
Panasonic,
Panasonic, I mean, is the parent company for Techniques, just FYI. But we have a York system in the house. So now, I mean, what was the selling point? It was like, graphic equalizer. The fact that you can finitely. It had a graphic equalizer. So that was a big thing. I mean, it has a tape, dual cassette tape, obviously, because that's what you needed back there, because now it's dubbing of tapes and that sort of thing is also entering.
I know you had some pause mixtapes back in the day, so you made the pause.
Right? Well, we're getting to that. I mean, like I said, that particular system wasn't mine, so I didn't have a whole lot of personal liberty with it, independently, I guess. But I think, I mean, there were a number of different little boom boxes in the house. They had a record button. Maybe not even boom box. I remember my sister had a little radio. It was the color of the shirt. It was an 80s little radio. As a matter of fact, and the beanie and the shorts too. It was a sherbet in aqua affair, but it was this little, it's radio about the size of a generous bread box, but it had a record button. So we're as a kid, I remember hearing funk stuff that wasn't necessarily in the house, but here on the radio, hearing on like KJR, hearing stuff like Bad Man Pajama or what's the one? Funky Right On Up, or what's the one that Snoop redid? Funky early 80s joints.
Okay.
On the radio. So, and I'm liking that. It feels and sounds black, and melody I'm falling in love with, just the sing-songy nature of music. So I'm recording stuff off the radio randomly. I'm very radio focused, as a matter of fact. I mean, because that's all you really have as a kid. So I'm calling into radio stations requesting stuff. I'm doing light recording myself. But yes, once the York system's in the house, I'm buying tapes. I mean, even back then, I mean, before rap, what's the first stuff? I'm buying records. My brother's record collection is sort of developing as well.
Your brother, you probably got a lot of records from your brother, huh?
Well, not a lot, but key ones. I mean, because he's 6 years my senior, so he's just hipper than me. He's bringing the hip stuff into the house. During his.
Was he one of those big brothers like leave me alone, like stop messing with my stuff and get away from my records type brothers? Not
my records, but like I said, we just were in different circles. He also was a professional. I mean, not back then. He was I shouldn't say. With the same energy, he would eventually give to tennis. He also very early on was established as a singer. He would sing in church. He's always had a very angelic voice. It's what brings my mother the most joy to this day. He was in the Seattle Boys Choir very early on, and I followed those footsteps too. I was in the boys choir for maybe a summer, but I did. I wasn't him. I wasn't that super duper into it. But he's also traveling the world, with the boys choir. He went to Japan early. He came back with a super duper ill at the time Walkman back then. Now technology is emerging. So Walkman. He came back with this red and silver AWIA brand Walkman that was so ill.
He probably had the one that clicked that could water resistant.
It was. I think it might have been almost. Yeah, it was ill for the time. All we had access to was what we could buy at Jafco. Best, Sony. Radio Shack. But then then as I'm growing, then like Sony Sports, Walkmans are developed.
Yeah, that's the one.
And also mega bass, things of that nature. As hip hop is growing, it's leaning on bass is a thing. So having a mega bass Walkman, having a proper set of headphones that usually weren't the headphones that came with it. So I'm independently buying headphones over and over again. I like Pay and Save and Radio Shack and things of that nature. Getting replacement, sponge pads for him and all that kind of thing or whatever. So yeah, he's doing his singing thing.
When you talk about your brother, it reminds me of my uncle. He was a classical singer also. He actually went to the Navy and sung in the naval choir and sung for Ronald Reagan. And that was his main thing. He was a classical singer and he played piano.
Right.
And I always think about him. And he ended up dying of HIV when I was like 19, and I think he was very young.
Right. Ooh, you said 19. That was also.
I was 19. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I'm saying the fact that you said 19 also brought me back to more sort of hip hop memory stuff that I'm listening to. Stuff like Paul Hardcastle, 19.
And I just never, and I'm glad that your brother is still, that he's still alive and has that musical background, because I always wanted to get to the age that I am now at 48 and just be like, man, we could have made some dope music. Because I always looked up to him as the musician. Because me and my cousin used to. My cousin, he could sing and he could play the piano. So me doing hip hop and poetry and things of that nature, that was my way to try to compete with my cousin for my uncle's attention, because he was such a esteemed musician. He was just incredible, like amazing.
Yeah, no, I'm sure. I'm
They went to the School of Creative Performing Arts.
Okay, yeah, that's amazing. Obviously, he was taking it seriously.
Yeah, he's no joke.
But my brother went, like I said, he was not Harlem, but Northwest Boys Choir. Was always a standout in whatever ensemble he was in. He was just a natural standout. His voice is truly his instrument, and he wields full control over it. And he and with such a passion for it, came lots of late nights, and even to this day, he sings in spaces where he's not really aware that he's singing, or maybe he is and just doesn't care, but he just has to do it. Like I said, came up a lot of late night, being at the piano, ding 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 ding, la 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 la, ding ding ding, la la la, where he's getting 100% in tune with, and that I credit ultimately is what trained my ear to notice when something is beautifully on or annoyingly off. Same thing as far as being raised in a church. We went to a number of different churches, and actually before Green Lake, the churches we went to were in the CD. Spruce Street is one of my early church memories, and that's right behind Garfield. It's still there. It has grass growing all over it now, but we went to Spruce Street. I remember getting mints from the elders in their purses, and and super duper early Sabbath school memories, but also the flavor of the music, the emotional connection with music, and those chords, like the emotion behind chords. When there's a sermon happening and it's ending, there's the refrain that starts to creep in black churches, on the keyboard, and it's kind of playing this loop, but he's playing it kind of beautifully differently every time it comes around, for however long it takes for the pastor.
I didn't know if there was a lot of music in Jehovah's Witness, or was it Seventh Day Adventist?
Seventh Day Adventist. I mean, it's black church, so it's not. It's okay. It's black folks.
Because my aunt is Seventh Day Adventist.
I mean, I shouldn't say Seventh Day Adventist is a black religion, but I'm saying the churches I'm going to are black churches.
Yeah. Okay. So, I can't remember because my aunt is she's Seventh Day Adventist, and I can't remember.
But I'm saying, I mean, did she sing hymns? I mean, and not to mention. Seventh Day Adventism is a big religion in the Caribbean.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Specifically, So both
how you and your brother connected with the music? You being such a incredible artist that you are musically, you got to tell me that you and him have collaborated.
I've assisted him in a number of ways. My mother still begs for us to have an official collaboration, and we will. I mean, it's something I'd like to do.
You guys got to come out with an album or something. That would be amazing.
I have to wrap my brain around it, and my brain, and many Gemini's brains are working on thinking of billions of things at a time. So,
what about your brother? What's his sign?
He is I want to say what's it, Sag?
Okay.
Whatever. No. He's 2 days after my mom. My mom's December 8th. He's a day after my mom, December 9th.
Okay, so maybe a Capricorn.
Capricorn, yeah. We're both Capricorns. My sister's a Gemini. She's born May 30th. I'm June 10th.
Yeah, man. I'm just like, we played tennis the other day, and you were telling me that about your brother. I never knew that about your brother. I'm like,
as far as what?
Just like I didn't know he was a professional singer, and that's what he do.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I'll shoot you some links. I've been sharing more of his artistry personally over the past few years.
Man, y'all gotta do something, man.
I'll send you some. He's amazing to this day. He works. I mean, even now he lives in Houston now. He works for an organization called. He sings for a particular church, but he also works for a Music Doing Good, which kind of has a youth outreach sort of a bend to it. But he also is, like I said, professional. He graduated from West Virginia University with a master's in applied voice. So he knows the properties of voice. He knows quite a few languages just because he's singing opera. So he's fluent in German, Italian. I mean, I should say fluent, but he's sung it for years. I mean, he's had boxes of tapes. I remember this boxes and boxes. I mean, he's a studier. Boxes of tapes. Pavarotti. He was part of three Mo tenors, which is the black version of three tenors, which is Pavarotti. I'm horrible with the names, but three very.
I know
the best of their field, the three tenors.
Right.
But there's a black version that traveled around. They actually hosted a Tony Awards show, like televised. I forgot which year, but like they're performing throughout the entire joint. Like if I were to sit here and try to ring off all of his accomplishments over here, I'd be here for hours. So he's very accomplished, and but yeah, back then, like it's just sort of music. He's, as far as the records that I did, kind of inherit, perhaps strong arms quietly while he was playing tennis. He just wasn't transfixed. That's just one little thing. It's not like even his collection is massive. He's also turning into a Prince fan because he's of that age, 6 years my senior. And what's happening in the 80s, Prince and Michael Jackson are just like the biggest.
Don't tell me he had a Prince racket too.
No. It was not on brand. Like I said, he was on the Kaniso rackets. He was on the rackets that Yvonne.
Yeah, you did say that. My bad.
But he had, records that I still have in my collection that were his. Salt and Pepper, Push It with Tramp. That's a single. I can't remember if I bought it or not. I think I did. Or no, maybe him. System, Don't Disturb This Groove. There were a few more, but then I started buying records. I have access to a bus and go downtown. I'm buying records and buying cassette singles, but I'm also starting to buy records. I think the first record I buy is like Susudio, Phil Collins, 45.
Hold on real quick, Gary. Hold on. Quick time.
Yep.
Pardon, Sam. I don't know if you heard that. I had the dishwasher on, man, and that.
Oh yeah, no, I didn't hear it.
Okay.
But What's saying? First records I'm buying. Yeah.
Yeah.
The freedom of being able to go downtown yourself, taking the 14 downtown. So, or, early memories, the old downtown, monorail before Westlake was there.
Damn.
I mean, I remember old Seattle, and then, stores where you're starting to buy like cassette singles and stuff like that. So that's more as I'm growing. But I think the first records I'm buying are probably Euro pop stuff. Phil Collins, I remember Sussudio, and perhaps "Baby Don't You Lose My Number" or something like that on the B side. But those were both videos on MTV. So it's just a function of what you're being exposed to. So my sister was into like Duran Duran and things of that nature. She's going to different schools with different populations, university prep, Lakeside ultimately. So, I mean, but everybody is being exposed to the Duran Durans and the NXSs and the Pet Shop Boys and things of that nature. I'm not
cuts, bro.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm hip to them now and run their joints all the time now. But like I said, we all have radios. We're taping stuff off the radio, requesting stuff. I remember calling a Cube, trying to request automatic Pointer Sisters, but I didn't know it was Pointer Sisters, so I'm just calling up. I just think it's the jam. Can you hear automatic? Like, yeah, but Pointer Sisters, sure thing. And I'm like, click. I'm like, oh. Hey, can I hear automatic? Can I hear automatic? Yeah, but Pointer Sisters, sure.
Yeah.
Hey man, can I hear automatic? Boy, if you don't get off my line, I'm gonna find you and hurt you. Oh, click. So
So how's that transition to you going to like the Garfield, man? And
I'm saying here I'll explain the whole school trajectory. So my best friend is next door neighbor. He goes to, and him and his whole family actually, they're Catholic. We're Seventh-day Adventists. And even just like the difference in that, oh, you go to church Sunday, you go to church Saturday, you can do like me, like, certain stuff is like sundown stuff. I can't do something until sundown. I can't play, like Sabbath, observing the Sabbath. So I can't really do Friday night stuff. And I can't really do too much secular or fun stuff, worldly stuff till sundown Saturday. We're going to Saturday church, probably going to somebody's house for, or either eating at church potluck afterwards or going to fellowshipping at a friend of the family's house, kicking it with their kids and, kids at the kids table, adults at the adult tables, having their adult conversations. We're trying to have sneak our fun in before, as much fun as we can before, sundown technically or whatever. And I had gone like to church with him a couple of times, whatever. I wasn't necessarily super interested in Catholicism, but he was just a homie, and I was like, yeah, man, I want to go to your school. And I went, like I said, so I went to John Muir kindergarten, first grade, North End. On the tail end of the years, my brother was going to that school. My brother and sister were going to Christa Elementary School. It was like in the North End, like 175th or something like that. Almost Shoreline. I forgot what the city back then was called. Anyways, second to fourth grade, I go to Madrona in the city where I develop really good friendships. Fifth and sixth grade, I go to St. Therese because my next door neighbor goes. So I'm like, yeah, I want to go to St. Therese. And there's black folks there too. As a matter of fact, it's almost a primarily black Catholic school. It's in the city. Seventh and eighth grade, I go to a school in Bellevue named Odell. It's Odell Middle School, and that was a school that a friend of mine that I had fun kicking it with when our parents were going to Green Lake Church. His name was Blair Newman. He lived in Bellevue. I would go over to his house, after church. It wouldn't necessarily be a family thing. Like, you can go yourself. And he lived in Bellevue, this kind of this ill house, gigantic yard, big old trampoline, an ill ass house too. It's like all kind of secret passageways and just a fun ass house. He's this white kid. We're just good ass friends. He got toys. It's not like he has all this stuff I don't have. I mean, perhaps it did, but it wasn't like super one sided. Like I'm just trying to milk you for your resources, whatever. We're kicking it, and it's BMX era. He has a couple of bikes. We're biking down, like you know where Skate King is.
Which one?
Skate King in Bellevue.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Like if you're heading towards it, if you keep on going, the street that you turn into, if you keep on going down that street, about 2/3 of a mile, if you turn left, there's all these complexes that you have to kind of zigzag up these hills.
Skate King is still around?
No, I'm trying to give you I'm just trying to give you the area.
Okay, yeah.
It hasn't been there for it, but I'm just saying that's where in Bellevue he lives. About almost a mile past that Skate King, you see all these trees on the left. I mean, there's like
I'm familiar.
Developed sort of neighborhoods on the right, but on the left, there's all these inlets to these hilly areas that take you up this hill. So there's many houses on the hill on your way up. His house was like on the top of the hill. So, like I said, it has a long ass yard, where it has all the room in the world to sit here and like play with like a Nerf boomerang. It's a big ass yard. You can do all types of shit in the yard. Where I remember 4th of July, we're having like bottle rocket fights, or not bottle rocket, but Roman candle fights. Mm-hmm. But he has a big ass yard, so you can just put extra clothes on or whatever. Basically, I'm kicking with him, and back at this time, and I remember these musical markings. This is like Michael Jackson Bad album. So I don't know if it's 87 or something like that, 86. And my mom also, like I said, she went from working in the budget office downtown to this other department, BALD, Building and Land Development, but that was in Bellevue. So I was was begging her to let me go to his school. When he went to a middle school named Odell. And she let me go. And she was part of my commuting because she lived over there. I mean, she worked over there. So she would drop me off in the morning. But then it turned to, she would drop me off in the morning. I would take the bus back. I'd take a metro bus back.
That's tough.
And so I'm learning more of the city. 7th and 8th grade, that's 5th and 6th at St. Therese, 7th and 8th in Bellevue. But that's also, all the things that will happen to you in a suburb as a young Black kid, Bellevue, I'm there with, jocks, fake Adidas, while, Terry and Brandon are there with the they got the fucking tour, Run DMC tour suit, and every pair of Bo Jacksons and trainers every time they come out, like every pair of Jordans, everything. But I'm at first day of school, they're looking at me like I'm in a petri dish or something. So you like hip hop? so you like rap? I'm like, you're the one with the freaking Run DMC tour fit.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, the school had its memorable things. I remember like the cafeteria, like a la carte, eating like cinnamon rolls, be able to just buy cinnamon rolls in the middle of the day, like, it just had some other little shit, some little East Side type of shit. So different type of shit, whatever. I think I play basketball on a team, like a team across the street. The Y. I'm not really attached to it. I'm just doing stuff as kids do, but also New Jack Swing is sort of emerging. There's all types of other things. Actually, there's a connection too. The music that we're listening to the household. There's a cousin that comes to live with us for a while. She's very Seventh-day Adventist. We also from Panama. Friend of my mother's child. Basically, call her cousin Hilma. She's big into, I guess, the contemporary of the gospel of the day. So it's BB and CC Winans. It's Take Six. But also it's the same era of like Whitney Houston, and BB and CC Winan produced, had a hand in the production of Whitney. They share very similar sonic palettes as far as what keywords are used and sounds and kind of just the aesthetic. Just BB and CC had jams
Oh,
they were gospel. I mean, technically, they were singing about God, but it also showed just the thin line between secular and non-secular. Because I'm falling in love with just these keyboard riffs and just all these kind of the flavor of production, and then New Jack Swing starts to emerge. But even all that, I guess it's more early rap. So I guess that's the Rap Attack era, the KNHC era, where I'm listening to radio and taping stuff off the radio, and hip hop is starting to grow. Rap Attack being Nasty Ness's show, the first hip hop mix show of Seattle, where he would travel to New York and come back with New York records, and I mean all kind of records. But he basically was blatantly biting Mr. Magic, whose show on the East Coast was called Rap Attack. But even before Rap Attack, Nasty Ness was on the radio. K Fox, I want to say Fresh Tracks. 1250 K Fox. He had a show called Fresh Tracks. But yeah, it's pretty much introducing all the fly urban stuff and hip hop as it starts to crank out more stuff. So I'm taping shows like that. Getting more familiar. Like I said, 7th, 8th grade, that's Whitney Houston and Run DMC. And yeah, I remember that. I remember buying, Raising Hell. I remember Blair buying Raising Hell too. So Raising Hell is being played in this Bellevue household. But it's just because everything, it's also crossover, there's Aerosmith on that. There's Walk This Way. There's all these intersections that are causing this hip hop thing to grow. And so 9th and 10th grade, I went to Seattle Prep, another Catholic school. And I believe might have been on the heels of the next door neighbors too, the Pat Sulas or maybe even Zach. But I remember when I got there, that was 9th and 8th grade. Yeah, 9th and 10th grade. I remember New Jack Swing is bubbling. The Good Girls, Guy, stuff like that. But hip hop is expanding too, because I remember being picked up from the house. More Tennis Connection too, from a kid named Chris Louis, who was actually the grandson of Wen Louis, the Wen Louis photographer. And they live not too far from my mother's house on Bella Vista, this pink mansion. And he was spoiled laced. He used to pick me up in his brand new Jetta, cherry red Jetta, German engineer, like fly.
Just so people know who ain't from Seattle listening to this, because this goes all over the world, actually, potentially. Top is trying to act like his mom didn't do good for her. I've been to his house. He lives in.
What are you talking about trying to act like? I'm saying
it's a very nice neighborhood.
I'm saying just like we were born, you don't pick where you're.
No.
Yeah, I'm not trying to downplay.
What I'm saying is, when I remember going to your house the first time when I was like in college, being like, man, it's beautiful.
I mean, I got, like I said, but I do remember as a kid. I don't know if I was romanticizing, overly romanticizing, perhaps. Areas I didn't. I mean, I my mom's house is where the South End starts.
Yeah.
So the South End technically sort of starts on McClellan. Right, Franklin's technically South End. I mean, where the addresses start saying South is, I don't maybe even the Tennis Center or something like that. Might start the South. But it's definitely a nice house, definitely a nice neighborhood.
Yeah, it's beautiful, man.
It's gorgeous. I love it. I'm still there in efforts to hold on to the house.
That's awesome.
I'm here with my son and my sister and my mom half of the year. I remember back in I remember being all these things. So my mom wants to keep me in Seattle Prep. It's college preparatory, but it's also Catholic. So I don't have any connection to Catholicism still. But she's thinking of, preparing me for college or whatever, and they're doing all types of stuff like meditating and doing all this secular, all this religious sort of bend to the education too. I'm falling in love with music and everything aligned with hip hop culture, including the dancing, as New Jack Swing is becoming more prominent by itself and even through rap's representation.
You keep saying New Jack Swing. Won't you educate the public?
New Jack Swing is a production technique ushered in late 80s by, I want to say primarily, Teddy Riley. Yeah. Teddy Riley. And he's actually the person that got me into even thinking about production, just like he got me into production, because the mixture of his pretty much gospel chords with the bounce of his brand of hip hop styled beat making, it borrowed from the Marley Marls, where it's a lot of bits, hits, pieces, all types of stuff. It really, there's actually, what's this? George McRae, I Get Lifted. I get lifted. Burn down, that little riff. Burn down, that's like the foundation of 85% of Teddy Riley's beats, as far as when he first on the scene. But he's also producing for a lot of different people. He produced, and I didn't know this back then, but his hand is in a lot of major production. He produced The Show for.
Absolutely. You said hand, and he got that classic sample of Grandma's hand.
Yeah, that's that would come later through Blackstreet, but even before even New Jack Swing, he produced The Show for Dougie Fresh, and like this is called The Show. Teddy Riley produced that.
He's a bad man.
That's crazy.
Yes,
and it doesn't sound like New Jack Swing. But if I were to break it down, he's playing. A lot of these things are replaying popular things. But even that, so you're replaying the Professor or Inspector Gadget theme. But he returns to production forefront with New Jack Swing. So that's Guy's production aesthetic. It's all this. It's the danceability part. It's where danceability and melody meet hip hop sensibilities. So he's chopping up break beats. So he's just like Marley Marl. He's isolating kicks. He has the funky drummer snare, memorable things, or things that you start to hear more and more in hip hop. He's taking a very bit by bit approach to it. Funky, these little James Brown hits, funky down, but he's placing them all around these beats, and it's giving this melodic thing, this other feeling that's just raw. And I'm just like, not to mention, he would really be having fun with, like, I still contend he invented the remix, because a lot of his early productions had just 7-8 different mixes on them. The 7-inch per cappella, where it'd just be like just the percussion and an acapella. But like just the extra percussion, the claves and the hi-hats and something like that, with just a light amount of instrumentations. The 12-inch club dub, and it'll be doing all kind of stuff before like the verse hits, playing like with samples. He's sampling, Aaron Hall and playing with Aaron Hall sampling like the first 2 minutes of this mix, and it might go to the chorus and then does some other thing, but it does all these other things that the main version of that song doesn't do. So getting a 12-inch single or a maxi single is like an event, because it's non-album fun this music maker is exposing you to. It's the Quiet Storm mix.
Was he a DJ too?
I don't can neither confirm nor deny, but most producers have a hand in DJing.
Right.
DJing lends itself to production, sample based particularly, because
he's one of my favorite producers of all time.
Yeah, as I'm saying, like I'm saying that, and how varied it is. Like go from Quiet Storm, and I'm also prepubescent, so he's making love joints that you're sprung on a girl, they're your soundtrack for being sprung or something like that. You know what I'm saying? But he's outputting all these sides, funky danceability, Quiet Storm, all this type of a thing. Who did he produce for? The Good Girls. You're sweet. It's my weakness, and all these stuff. If you go back and listen to it, it's all James Brown. James Brown drums, James Brown just interpolation. Even with the George McRae, like it's just kind of a different take on like what Breakbeat Lou was doing, like with the Ultimate Breaks, beats and breaks, which were the production tools for most first hip hop producers, producers, where this one DJ assembled all these breaks or these songs that had drum only breakdowns or the funky part breakdowns and put them out as a compilation for the person who wasn't even, didn't have the time or the resources to go dig and find all these. He's sitting here giving you this manual, these compilation records with all these different breaks. I forgot how many per side, but there's volumes and volumes of them, 7, 8, 9 volumes of these joints. So most of the early hip hop production is made off of those records versus the actual records. But yeah.
So you listening to Teddy Riley and you be like, man, I gotta do what he's doing. Man.
Well, and I'm dancing to it. I'm dancing to it because it's hip hop dancing. Now it's stuff like House Party. And even the hip hop that I'm now getting into beyond the first inkling with Rapper's Delight and then Rocket. Then it's to New Jack Swing is the iteration, but even hip hop artists are being produced by Teddy Riley. I remember first sort of albums I'm buying. First album I got as a gift, I think, was Taste of Chocolate, Big Eddie Kane. I got that as a Christmas gift. And but I'm also buying my own stuff, like I said, like
because remember Teddy was,
any songs that I think is tight that comes with the single,
He was one of the first people I saw with the piano guitar.
The guitar. Yeah, I mean, all that stuff. He's emulating. He's pretty much trying to be the second coming of like Zapping them and Roger.
Mm-hmm.
He's doing talk blocks. I just want to dance for you. Mm-hmm. He's where Roger takes off, or he's the second coming, the second level of Roger. I wouldn't even say way more, but because Roger's stuff is deep as hell for how early it was. Like I Want to Be Your Man and all these things, the cowbell aesthetic, drum machines, keyboards, all these things are developing in the consciousness of commercial. As hip hop expands, so does the behind the scenes. So how do you make it with these keyboards? Now sampling comes the thing. Sampling's been happening. Marley Marl, all that kind of a thing. But then there's the Cosby Show episode with Stevie Wonder, where he kind of introduces the concept of a sampler through Middle America. So everybody's watching this joint every Thursday, and what was the
SK1?
Well, yeah, that came after. Yeah, Stevie Wonder's wasn't an SK1 though. It was just, back then actually, all kind of keyboards and samplers and synthesizers to varying degrees were very expensive. Not everybody had them. They were probably part of an expensive studio. So sure, Stevie Wonder had access to them. Herbie Hancock, actually, he was a very early sampler as well. There's a really, really early videos. He's obviously, you see his career, and even in the 70s, he was the keyboard man. He's in the middle of a circle of keyboards. He's always been a synthesizer proponent, so he knows the ins and outs of them, even stuff like a Moog or a theremin or something like that. Like I'm not sure if you're hip to a theremin.
I know the
theremin.
Moog,
Theremin is the sound on Star Trek, the theme song.
Yeah.
That's actually a synthesizer. That was its original purpose was to be its original design was like home security, where it's making a noise based on how close a moving object is to it. So you really kind of played it with your hands. So that's a theremin. That's an early. You think of that, it's like 60s, late 60s, 70s. That's high tech stuff back then or whatever. So a person like Herbie Hancock has probably been into those kind of things since then. So he's same thing. He's working. He is a Stevie. He's even more of a Stevie. He was started with Miles Davis in there. He's playing on Jackson Street. He's has super duper early musical roots. He just has transcended the decades. But to see him in the 70s and to see him in the 80s on some Rocket, and then perhaps pass the torch. Not even pass the torch, but Stevie Wonder is also very synthesizer. Don't Drive Drunk, and it's the electronic sort of era of the 80s, all that stuff. And then, like I said, that episode comes on and he pretty much shows everybody what sampling is about. And at that point, sampling is really only your voice. He's in the studio and he's sampling the Cosby's family unbeknownst to them. He's just, as they're talking, what's your boyfriend's name? Robert, and everybody's so amazed, and Vanessa, I don't know what to say. I don't know what to say. I don't know what to say. Everybody's like, whoa, you could actually manipulate somebody's little vocal clip or whatever. So the concept of sampling is introduced. Then capitalism going to capitalize. Casio comes out with the SK1, which is the first kind of the layman's, whatever the term I'm looking for, just the first iteration of sampling that mass America can have access to. But ultimately, I remember there was the SK1, and then Radio Shack, the store of the day, no longer exists. It turned into a store like Fry's, where it's an electronic store, but Radio Shack was electronic store, like the first one on steroids, where it has electronic stuff. It has soldering guns. I remember commercials for like ITT Computer Tech, ITT Technical Institute, and you see somebody with like a soldering gun, messing with some circuitry or something like that. So they had stuff like that if you were into that, but they also had just basic. You could figure out some stuff like I need an extension cord. I need to make this cord longer. It'll have the bit that allows you to make it longer. You can buy the next cord that you need, the longer cord too. So there's a logic to a place like Radio Shack.
And those realistic mixers, man.
I mean, realistic everything. Realistic was just like, the cheaper version. I mean, all these things are being made. It's all capitalism. All these things are being made in the same factories.
Hey, man, that was a lifesaver, man.
I'm saying, well, and like I said, you mentioned the SK1. I was gifted an SK1 like after the Cosby Show episode of Christmas. I mean, it came out and it was like, whoa, SK1. Yeah, I forgot what the commercials were, but wow, there's a sampler you could mess with. But basically, the whole thing was it had an onboard mic. You had a little button, and you could say something into the mic, and then it would spread that all over every key while it being pitch sensitive. It'd be like middle C would be the speed that you said it, and everything else would be lower and slower or higher and faster. And then it had all these demo songs, and you could hit demo song number 1, and it would play the demo song, but it would use your voice as the key. So you might say Barry, play this whole song with Barry all over the keys, or whatever you said. But that's pretty limiting after a while. You want to do something else. And I don't know that I necessarily wanted to, but I remember looking in the back of it, and at that point, I probably wasn't a person that was scouring the instruction manual. So I saw something that said line in and line out too. I was like, line in?
Oh yeah.
Wait a minute.
Yeah.
Line in? And it had a headphone jack. I'm like, so I could insert something, something beside my voice. And at that particular time, only thing I had was a Walkman. I mean, various Walkmans that I purchased, to play my cassette singles and stuff like that. And I mean, and that had grown in the quality, I've got cheap Walkmans, and I've, saving up your money and getting a mega bass and saving up more money and getting maybe the super metallic one that's just a little bit bigger than the tape itself. But it's hi-fi. It's like,
Yeah.
So I think that's the one I had. And I was like, wait a minute. Line in. That means I could maybe sample something off the Walkman. But how can I hear what's on the Walkman? How can I hear the Walkman playing and sample at the same time? So I'm like, Y adapters. I mean, Radio Shack has Y adapters. It's a little Y with the aux plug, but it basically is like a headphone jack expander. So if two people could listen to a Walkman, like, ooh,
right.
Listen to it with me. But I've done that with a friend, but I'm like, wait a minute, I could use that thing. I could listen to one of them with a Walkman and put a cord into line in so I could hear what I'm sampling. So sampling turns into something in my mind. Like, wow. But it's not a full studio. It only can play these predetermined songs. So if I sample a piece of a drum or something like that, a piece of funky drummer,
That's it.
But I can't do much with it outside of triggering it with my finger. It doesn't sound great in song mode. Sounds like a cacophonous mess. So, you know, I'm hearing things like Funky Drummer, James Brown hits, and all these music that I like. Hip, you know, New Jack Swing stuff, R&B stuff, but I'm also buying hip hop as it grows. So I remember I had bought Self Destruction, the cassette single, and there's an instrumental on it. And Self Destruction is a song with all these rappers on it, and every verse is basically they're rapping on kind of the hit single of them, you know, but they're rapping about nonviolence. So Self Destruction had, you know, East Coast, you know, BDP, KRS-One, KRS-One, you know, Miss Melody, MC Light, Public Enemy. The Public Enemy part was just Funky Drummer, though. I think kind of to emulate their Rebel Without a Pause instrumental. So on the instrumental, it was just the rawest Funky Drummer I had been exposed to. You know, before that, it's just buried in song form in a Heavy D song or a Kid and Play song or something like that. But this is the first time I could hear, and even that, I don't even have a sense of who's it even by. I might have, you know, it might have been, it probably was the same sort of time. As a matter of fact, it is the same sort of time because, you know, LL Cool J's out. Mama Said Knock You Out. They hear me coming. I got the Funky Drummer drumming. And then the Funky Drummer is part of that, but it hits right where he's saying it. And it's, I already love it because it's so funky. It's so subtle. It's, if you know anything about Funky Drummer, it's just what it is. It is the backbone of hip hop. So when I sample it from the instrumental of Self Destruction, I'm like, wow, I got a drum. And I'm thinking, okay, how did they make this record? Okay, there's a drum part, and then there's some other part. Like, how are they layering these things? And that's when I went back to the tape. You know, where you're kind of overdubbing. Okay, so if it's sampling off the tape, it just needs to be on tape. So I think I with the same logic of line in, I probably do the same thing with my Yorks, the York stack system, as far as for me to record something coming out of the sampler. And I use the same logic from going out the sampler. If I want to record this to a tape player, I also have to hear what I'm doing while I'm doing it. So there's a wide jack coming out of the sampler. There's a wide jack coming out of my Walkman. Basically, I have this whole octopus of cords and adapters in this sort of a makeshift workstation, pre-production concept lap situation. But I'm, you know, so let's say I grab Funky Drummer, the little 4 count, open count of Funky Drummer, boom, boom, tap, 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 tap. But okay, now I'm like, okay, I like this drum beat. If I make it a song, how long are songs? I'm being informed by all these hip hop things. No more than 4 minutes and some seconds. The competition, you know. So I'm like, okay, I need this for about 4 minutes. Boom, boom. So you know, there's no sequencer that I can tell to keep on triggering it. So I have to manually, trigger it for 4 minutes while I'm recording it to the Yorks. Boom, boom, 4 minutes. Then I'm like, well, okay, now let's put something on top of it. But how am I going to put something on top of it? I mean, same sort of thing. I'm just dealing with the records that I have disposal. And outside of the secular or the religious records, there's other little random records in the house, you know, Miriam Makeba, something African, other jazz stuff, Louis Armstrong, you know, I think that was me and Andre Crouch, these little things that I'm, you know, Andre Crouch record that I, you know, I'm picking funky pieces that I like, or I'm just keeping them in my Memento Rolodex. But I remember there was a jazz record, and I don't know, I forgot the name of the song. It's a jazz standard. It's like the swing era, but I'm like, ooh, that's kind of a little funky little loop, but it's drastically faster than Funky Drummer, so I want to sample it. But even the sample time that comes with the SK1 is so limited. I can't even sample that whole loop, even if I play that on 78. That's at least like 4 seconds, and the SK1 has maybe like 1.2 seconds total.
Yeah, it was like 1.5 or something like that.
Something like that. But it's not like you could chop anything off of it. You couldn't truncate anything. You had to catch the sample from the beginning, from the start time you wanted. Like
I'm trying to figure out how you're gonna put this over there if you ain't got no tracking, you ain't got no multi-tracking.
This is a Radio Shack state of mind. So I recorded onto a tape. I recorded Funky Drummer, me triggering it onto tape for 4 minutes. Then I get ready to sample as much as I can of this little jazz loop. Little 8-count jazz loop. But the sample time is so limited, even at the record's fastest playability, that I pretty much can only sample about a third of the loop. So yeah, that's as much as I can sample at a time. But if I were to chop it up to 3 pieces, it'd be like, that'd be a piece, and then it'd be da 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 da. That's another piece. And then is the third piece. So I have the 4-minute recording of me triggering Funky Drummer, and I put that back in my Walkman. Same way that I was triggering and recording that for 4 minutes, I can also play it out of my Walkman and record it into this thing. I can record this whole thing. I can record all 4 minutes of Funky Drummer, but since I'm using the Y adapters coming out both my Walkman and the sampler,
gotcha.
I am triggering the first third of the sample over that. Then I'm taking that recording, putting it back. I'm triggering the second third of the sample for another 4 minutes. Coming back, taking that recording, re-recording that into the Yorks, have the third, triggering the third of the sample. All these things for 4 minutes. So I have a beat, technically. I have a 4-count drum and an 8-count loop. But it's, what's that? 1, 2, 3. That's almost like 5, 6 generations of playing, recording. So it's super ashy. But it's something I made. I'm like, wow, I made a beat. And I don't know, I may have done, and I don't know how many I did like that. Maybe 2 or 3. If 2 or 3 at all. I might have been just been the one. I probably was just walking around with this beat, proud of this beat. Like, but I'm also same sort of thing. In the same time frame, I'm also actively like taping Rap Attack, the Sunday night rap show that Ness is doing. And it's a 2-hour rap show, and it's the first hour and a half is all the new music, he's playing whatever, and then the last half hour is like the master mix by whoever. And back then, I don't know, it might have been B Mello or somebody, or even Ness, but it was this master mix. And using the York system, like I said, it had the graphic equalizer, it had the dual cassette tape, it had the tuner. If it was super duper, I think they would come on, they would later have a CD player as CDs developed, but that was the one we had was, I think, pre-CD player. But it also had the strip where you choose. The button is radio, the button is phono, the button is cassette tape.
Right.
The button is whatever, aux, whatever. Even aux, probably I wasn't thinking about it. There was a slot for something external of that machine, but I wasn't even thinking of that. But now that I think back, there probably was aux, something that you plug in from outside of it. But I would be recording, like I said, Rap Attack. I'm listening to it religiously, and I thought to same sort of thing. I'm scratching on top of a record, or like there's also a turntable on top of this thing, on top of the stack, and I had maybe a record, not even maybe a record of some sort, but it was like maybe queued up to a kick drum. That if it was on phono, you would hear me going, like I'm looking at the label. It's not like I'm marking records, but I'm getting the logic of DJing. So this sound occurs at this point of the record of their label turning or something like that. So I know there's a kick drum right here. So basically I would be recording Rap Attack and I would be injecting myself at like 4-count increments back to radio. So come that whole week, I'm listening to a version of Rap Attack that has these interjected scratches of me. So I'm mentally and physically kind of placing myself where I picture myself.
And what grade was this in?
This is 9th and 10th. This is as I'm as I want to leave Seattle Prep to come to Garfield.
Okay.
Because I mean, Seattle Prep, I'm getting picked up by Chris Louis, grandson of Wen Louis, photo empire here in Seattle. He's paid. He has a Alpines, the system of the day, the joint, the cars on Inkies, and you got the Alpine pull out and the Super Duke, the 6x9s, whatever else, and the songs, like the system testers of the day, like back then. This is 89, 90, 90, 91, like 89 through 91 is the 2 years I was at Seattle Prep. But I remember like the song used to test systems was like DOC, the formula. High energy, boom, boom. Like I have the most bass on tape at that time. Right. That was one of the car testers. Boom, boom, boom. And so yeah, I'm hearing that, and a super hi-fi system that I'm getting driven to school in. But I'm also, the Teddy Riley thing and all that. 89, that's when I acquired the SK1. So yeah, I'm doing this stuff as I want to, as I now also too. While I'm at Seattle Prep, and I'm not necessarily super duper into it, even though it's supposed to be college preparatory. It's highly religious. It's highly Caucasian. But I am into dancing, and I don't know if you remember the Sinclairs, like Bethany Sinclair.
Absolutely. Well, I went to school. I went to school with her brother Nathan.
Yeah, I'm saying the Sinclairs lived basically directly behind us, a block behind our house, and at Seattle Prep, dancing was the thing. Basically, we started a dance troupe called For You to NV.
You was in Bubbling Brown too.
I'm saying yes. It led to that. I'm saying so. I'm freshman and sophomore year. I'm at Seattle Prep, but I'm entranced with New Jack Swing. Good Girls, Teddy Riley production. After 7 production. All these things. Teddy Riley. So it's Keith Sweat. It's Albie Shore. All these things are New Jack Swing. And like I said, even you think back to these records, it's big dance songs and just as big ballads, or sexy songs, ooh, this love is so, and I won't let you go. And, like the French version and, like all these crazy kind of sound textures that are coming from the R&B minded, but there's a hip hop lens that's growing wider and wider. And, even like Teddy, Heavy D. That's I remember that's perfect. That album, Heavy D, not big time. Yeah, not big. Huh? Yeah, that is big time.
Yeah, it has to.
Yeah, where he's on the steps and super duper dancing. What's on the forefront of that? Dancing. Yeah. Trouble T. Roy. I'm saying the dancers. That's where Trouble T. Roy. And so dancing is huge. It's hip hop is bubbling. It's danceable.
Yeah, that was Kwame. That was Kid and Play.
I'm saying all these things. All these things.
Yeah.
There's. I'm seeing those movies. I'm seeing. So I'm being informed by hip hop. Shoot, Kid and Play's out. That means MTV. There's MTV Raps. That's also entering the country, spreading hip hop, and luckily, that era of hip hop, there was so much variety from the DOCs. You see all that in one show. DLC, Queen Latifah, Yo-Yo, Public Enemy, all kind of flavor across the board. We're getting exposed to every type of hip hop. Two Live Crew, Poor Righteous Teachers, Conscious, the Crazy, and everything is wrapped up in the First Amendment. You can't stop me from saying any of this.
Nope.
Because it's expression, and it's hip hop is just expressing the hell out of itself, and it's lovely. Shoot, MC Lyte, Queen Latifah. MC Lyte's the first star, real outside of after Roxanne, but even how her first album coming, she grew up in a household that had her in a African school, so she's talking about this means something in Swahili. You're hearing African stuff for the first time. Yeah. You're hearing X-Clan. You're being informed about other cultures. I'm saying all these things. X-Clan, just a hodgepodge of breaks that were so funky, and they had they were like pre-bomb squad, but they weren't all playing like they had an ear for samples, even samples that had really recently been used. They're sitting here using like special ed drums, rhyming over special ed, but the way that it would switch, everything would be so complimentary. You'd be like, these guys,
that Sugar Shaft.
Their X-Clan remains some of my favorites. It's like,
they one of the most slept on groups. We're gonna have to do a part 2, but let's get to the point where you meet Vitamin. We have to do a part 2, and
for sure, and my fault, man. I'm a long-winded individual, and I know that. but also, I do recognize that these stories, like, there are details and there's a syntax to what leads up to these things. So, I'm at Seattle Prep. I'm in this dance troupe. You know, nobody even asked us to. We just love dance. And Bethany had like this white boyfriend at the time who was kind of like an early vanilla ice dude. I mean, he was a funky white dude. And it was me, her younger sister. Was it that? No, it's me, Bethany, her boyfriend, and my man Sean Silves. Was that Deidre? It might have been Deidre. Another black girl, but we're pretty much like the only most of the black population in Seattle Prep. So, you know, we decided to get to do a dance troupe. And yeah, not to mention like MC Hammer's huge. So dancing is just huge. You got to know the dance. You know, the latest dance, and and even at dances, you're doing the latest hip hop dance. So that's big. So we decided to form a grand dance troupe called 4U2NV. I think I actually still have the drawing of that. As a matter of fact, 1 second, it's right here. As a matter of fact, we're gonna get jewels on this here podcast. I just handled it. As a matter of fact, yeah, and at this time too, there's BBD. So hip hop, it's like the first real, a lot of the mixture of hip hop and R&B, the marriage that would become synonymous. Right. Would become synonymous. It's the going from all these things, Boys to Men. I mean, yeah, all these things. Boys to Men, Another Bad Creation. Those are Dallas Alston, the producers. So they're kind of biting Public Enemy with all these kind of samples here, samples there, but there's a melodic bass to it. So like even those are our first concerts to go in to see BBD at Tacoma Dome at the Budweiser Superfest, like with Pebbles. And as a matter of fact, it's a drawing of, you can't see it, but as a matter of fact, it's a drawing. Like there's a crowd. There's probably Mike Bivens on stage. It's me and my sister. That's me and my sister.
Who drew that?
Me.
Oh, okay, that's dope.
Me and my sister in the crowd. Down the stairs. Here's the stage. This is Budweiser. So it's BBD, Pebbles, all the stuff over here. So this is probably 80. Oh, my fault. Ralph T, Pebbles, BBD, LL Cool J. So this is probably one of my first concerts at like Tacoma Dome, I think, back then. I drew Security. It's Do Me Baby. This is 91. Budweiser Superfest. My last year at Seattle Prep.
Wow.
So I'm even my caption is smack it up, flip it, rub it down. Oh no. My sister's beside me. But the one I was gonna pull out for this particular purpose. But that was drawn during my time at Seattle Prep. This is our group, yeah. 4U2NV. My name is BB. My nickname is BB because my name is Barry.
Hey, you were a heck of buff in that picture.
I'm Barry Jr. But this is just me teaching myself how to draw. Like everybody's buff, even the girls. Like I know, man. I'm just teaching myself whatever. But you see, there's semi graffiti style. I got the little sparkles. I got the little angles. I'm learning the hip hop aesthetic and infusing it into my life. So, and same thing. Even the pants, you'll see they're really polka dot. It's probably like a Leroy's fit or an oak tree, basically.
Exactly.
Oak tree. So it's polka dot, rayon pants, mock turtlenecks.
Of course.
All that kind of thing. So we're a dance troupe there. And then I meet my friend group from Madrona at a football jamboree. Like, oh man, this is my guy Adam Berganza and pal. Oh my goodness, all my good ass friends. Oh man. And at that point, Garfield still has a good science and math program, but it's hectic. Like people are getting stabbed up at basketball games and shit. And
Damn.
I mean, but yeah, back in the 90s, early 90s, Garfield. Yeah, because the basketball, like, shit was going down. Like I remember like in after a year at prep, I asked my mom to go to Garfield. She was like, nope. And because it was like it was really incident prone. And I asked to get a 91. Okay. I asked to get a 91 after I hooked up with my friend, and she remember those friends, my guy Sidney Nelson, like really good guys. And even back when I went to Madrona, I was in a program called IPP, which was like AP sort of, like it was like for gifted kids or whatever. And same sort of a thing still existed, but at Garfield. And that's, the trajectory of people were just doing, they did the regular public school trajectory of Madrona to Washington Middle School to Garfield. I'm the one that danced around and did all the Bellevue stuff and everything. But by the time, she did let me go. Like I said, this is like Michael Jackson era or bad album and all that kind of thing. Even that. You have to go to that sissy school of yours. I've kind of, it's nobody's coming at me like that, but it's the same. That's all the same time period. So prep could have been considered to some that sissy school of mine. And I also will say on some Cosby, after getting or befriending D and all that, as far as the tribe, they used to, lean in and call me on some Theo type of thing as far as coming to my house.
Oh, okay.
Like, oh man, you living like Theo, and I'm probably even over romanticizing, the ghetto of the ghetto children. My mom's probably, thinking like, Roy, what are you talking about? Like, exactly. Like, what are you talking about? Like, but I'm not, but I'm being exposed to all types of things, all types of different aesthetics, Anyways, I get to Garfield. I get to go back to Garfield. This is 91. So this is like Magic Johnson has AIDS, but I remember during the beginning of school, like that was like one of the hardest, like that. It might have been the second day of school that happened. Like he announced he had AIDS. And it was like, oh man, like AIDS is really, really around. But at Garfield, I meet Francis. I think is the first person that I really clicked. But actually, I saw probably the same assembly your homie did, where Ghetto Children performed, and Ghetto Children was like they were a number. It was 5 people. It was D, Bill, Dan, Capabilities. I wanted maybe even Kev, and one other person, Cliff. He was the oldest person. He probably was a senior. He was a music guy that took us under his wing. But also Derek's cousin is Sugar Bear from Emerald Street Boys, which is Seattle's real first rap group. And the thing I noticed as far as them on the assembly, Derek was scratching on what appeared to be the closest thing to a Technique 1200 I'd ever seen. It was like a Technique 1800 or something like that, because it had like a roller ball for the pitch instead of the pitch bar. But it was everything a Technique 1200 was except for the pitch. And that was so next level, because only thing we had access to was belt drive turntables, which are super wobbly. You're doing all the things like, putting pennies on the tone arm to make sure, to help them not jump and all these things, trying to make this belt drive turntable act like a direct drive turntable when it's not. And like, I'm just like my friends next door neighbor set up, like super duper thin and like plastic, like black plastic, thin, not even a plate. It's just what the surface the record's on, thin and super wobbly. It's not built for manual anything, but you're learning hip hop. Same thing as where I come back to my house's cabinet. I think I was putting pennies on that because it's jumping, like I'm sliding a record on top of another record. It's not optimal, but I'm trying to emulate this thing I see. And see the Ghetto Children performing, Bill's ill. Like this is wow, this is pretty much the most organized hip hop I've seen locally. And it happens to be during school. So we end up communicating. I don't know if Francis knows D, but we're just whatever. We run into each other. And I think, I'm especially interested in hearing how flushed out, some homegrown, high schoolers are making this performable hip hop, and the beats are just. I mean, these always had they're very musically informed or just melodic. There's a melody to them that, I mean, very early on, even back then, I don't have any connection with like I said, these records or the instruments. So the 70s is a whole bunch of electric piano, very lush, emotional stuff. But he's using that kind of stuff, and the beats are just like, wow, this is making me feel a thing. Like, but then I remember showing him my beat, and he's like, what the heck? Like, you made this? Like, and I'm telling him how I made this, and I'm like, whoa. When I go to his house at some point, I don't know if he was skipping school, but yeah, he wasn't the biggest fan of school. So I start leaning and doing.
I would definitely skip in school. I mean,
I start leaning and doing the stuff that I start leaning and doing the stuff more of the stuff I want to do, or that. Wow, you got equipment at the house? Yeah, school's gonna certain periods are gonna take a break, but we're also young, dumb guys. He's on some felonious activity. You know what I'm saying? We're sitting here rolling mixing boards from a class to his mom's house on the back streets of the CD with stuff covering like in a grocery cart, like down the back streets of the CD, making our way to his house.
I didn't see Vitamin and the crew take off with a whole soundboard at Seattle Center.
Yeah, I'm saying we were, we were young and dumb. We were young and dumb. Foolishness is bound in the head of a child. We were five finger discounters. We didn't have all the resources we didn't have all the resources in the world, but we were hungry, so we were five finger discounters at record stores.
What was the joint on Cap Hill? It wasn't a sound thing. What was it called, man?
Orpheum.
Yeah, one day.
Yeah, no. Riz used to work at Orpheum. A lot of these different people that
used to work at putting records down his. I'm like, what are you doing? Like,
down his pants. He'd have the trench coat. We would.
Hey, you gotta let me know what's going on.
Yeah. No, that was a regular thing. Cats would go in there as a posse and would sit there and lift the singles of the day or the records. When we were young and dumb. But meet the Ghetto Children. Francis actually introduces me to Hussein. Francis I meet Francis on some dancing stuff because I'm also dancing. I'm still fresh off of the dancing from 42 MV. So I'm at Garfield, and Garfield has Bubble and Brown Sugar. And as a matter of fact, all these things are where I'm meeting, where all these things.
The ringleader, huh?
Well, there's a genesis. Well, from like Preach and Teach.
Yeah.
The dance crew. They're from, Preach is from New York, I think. And I forgot where Teachers might be from, like North Carolina or something like that. But they were dancers. Dancing's big. They're like they're a dance duo. They're, showing up to parties like they're just the hypest dancers. Like these guys.
And they were older than us too.
Yeah, they were older. Basically, I met Preach. He was the choreographer for our Bubble and Brown Sugar routine. So he's also informed, I remember boing, boom, chop. Like he's a house head too. So he's infusing house stuff, early 90s house in our dance routine. Boing, boom, chop. But we're mixing all this stuff. But one of the dancers, her brother, his name is John Davis. But he went by Jay Styles. He was like one of the first professional DJs I met. And they live right off of like 23rd and Judkins. And I went, and he was in charge, or he was the person that was going to make our dance routine mix, basically. So I think I go over to his house with her after a practice or something like that, and walk into his state, and he has actual hip hop 12 inches, actual Techniques 1200s, a mixer. Like there's the first pair of turntables or Techniques 1200s that I actually touched. Like he had doubles. He had 2 copies of a record. He had 2 copies of Check the Rhyme. And I was like, whoa. And he let me use it. You know what I'm saying? He let me do it. And like my next door neighbor didn't. All those years, that was just like fantasy. And only thing I had left was the crossover stuff. But I put that down once I figured out SK1 and all that stuff. So I didn't even. That's like whoa, DJing, and I mean, shoot, same sort of thing. Derek had a 1800, which even back then, as a high schooler, how the hell would you even afford that? But that was like kind of gifted down to him through Sugar Bear, his cousin who's older, who's an actual rap star, or at least has, a rap star, but Seattle's first rap group. So, they're doing stuff in studios. They're actually taking us to studios. Like a lot of our early stuff we tried to record there's a studio right down the street from my mom's house. That was the studio. It was like just equipped somebody else's basement that had more professional equipment, like a little more adult than D. D had, the thing about D, he actually had a 4-track, like a multi-track device where you could do multiple things. You could make a song. Mm-hmm. He had a sampler. He had a real sampler that had control over shit. That wasn't just an SK1 with just your voice. It had a little LED, you can chop the beginning of it. And
I don't even think his first sample was an ASR. I think his first
no, it wasn't that. The ASR wasn't like that. No, it was the sampler. It was a Roland S10.
Yeah, because
even that had 4 banks. I mean, as far as limited sample time, it had 4 banks of maybe like 1.2 seconds each. But that's at, I want to say 45 kilohertz or something like that. You could drop it to 30 kilohertz and double the sample time, but you're decreasing the quality of but I'm saying all these now little tricks to expand, to flesh out ideas more. So he has a sampler. He also has a sequencer and a drum machine, because the sampler is just the thing that you sample with. So the sequencer is the thing that you program it with. Together. So he had an Alesis, a gray Alesis HR16. My fault. The HR16, it was a pair. It was the there's an MMT8. Oh, was it MMT8? Yes, the MMT8 was the sequencer. So that's when you're laying out a beat. It has like 8 little sequences. I mean, there's where you lay out the beat, but then there's also a drum machine. So additional to whatever you sample, there's actual drum machine, and that's the Alesis. That was the HR16.
Right.
That was the same pair of machinery that D'Angelo used on Brown Sugar.
Wow.
So the ride cymbal, all these stock sounds that sounded so jazzy were stock sounds. It's just
I got one of those Leases over there.
Yeah. The gray is gray.
No, I got the black one.
There was a smaller one. Yeah, we moved on too, but the first one they were gray. They were about as big as a piece of paper as far as a rectangle. The sequencer and the drum machine were the exact same size. They were like a pair. So now I'm hearing these beats used all this kind of lush sounds. He has extensive knowledge of records because he comes from a musical family. His dad's, came up in all these bands in the 70s. There's even approach to sample-based music is very musically informed. He knows all this stuff. This is part of his upbringing, versus me, like I'm learning about these groups via sampling. I don't have my parents' record collection, or I do, but it's full of religious stuff. It's not like a lot of other African American kids' houses where it has the Parliament, it has the James Brown, it has the Ramp, it has all these groups that I am oblivious to certain degrees until 80s, Bad Mama Jamma, Funky Ryan Up, all that kind of thing, whatever. So I'm learning about more music, the Crusaders and all the super melodic stuff that that was in the sample in the stores and in people's grandparents and parents' record collections. I'm learning that being exposed to D, but I'm also I'm returning to being a DJ. Same way I had my sampler set up. I was gifted a turntable by my friend Merrick Murray. He actually got killed.
Rest in peace.
That was kind of one of the earliest friends that ended up dying on some homicide. It really was some stupid shit. You could probably think back on some Friday, I think it was over some weed or selling weed for somebody, and
Yeah, I heard they were like
Somebody.
breaking into some like storage bins, and then he brought up some stuff and about him allegedly snitching on someone, and they were
Yeah, it was all bad
got
because
him
as a matter of fact,
arrested.
because I used to just like I was getting picked up from
The dude went to
the house.
O'Day. He was one of our friends. He went to O'Day.
Yeah, I remember. I'm saying,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. And there's and even Seattle Prep and O'Day had a connection. I mean, just the trajectory of what schools he ended up in. My first car was inherited from my sisters. It was a Hyundai, and I used to pick Merrick up and drive him to Garfield.
Okay.
And yeah, he gifted me this JVC turntable that had a really thick platter, but it wasn't like a Technique. I mean, it was thicker than the plastic ones, so it was closer to a DJ. Like, whoa, it's thick.
Mm-hmm.
This might be better for my hand. You know what I'm saying? Like, I could weight it. Like, it was a step closer to something like a Technique. But I had only a line mixer, like a radio line mixer. Like, it was a realistic mixer, but it was just 5 like lines that you push up like this. Like, you slide up just like a radio sort of a thing. So in the same sort of a mind state, I turned it sideways to try to emulate a fader, you know. Instead of up and down, you turn it sideways, and now you're exposing sound by moving it sideways. But that's only favoring my right hand because it's not like it's a crossfader and it does it on the way left. It only exposes the right. Right. So, anyways, that's I have that by the time I'm toying around and making my little beat, my little SK1 beat. Meet Vitamin at Garfield, 91, 92. We're all classmates. Meet Hussein. Hussein is also from Boston, but originally from Africa. So he has a whole nother.
He's really from Boston. No wonder he sounds like Guru.
Yeah, I'm saying. I mean, he was raised in Boston. Yes, he was raised in Boston.
Oh man,
I think
like that.
Yeah, exactly. I'm saying yes. That's why his thing is informed. But white mother, African dad. African dad is really like a Fela Kuti type. He's a very famous guitarist in the Congo.
Yeah.
And
I guess
and even back then I couldn't really wrap my brain around it because even like Hussein would try to, because he could play too, and he would often even try to like infuse it in production. It would become infused more and more later on down the line, but initially it was just like I didn't have a sense of who Fela Kuti was. But Fela Kuti's like, you know, James Brown of Africa, on some funky,
one of the most influential artists in the history.
Yeah, of music. You know what I'm saying. So I'm becoming more and more informed about music just by exploring hip hop, and dabbling in hip hop's construction because it's made off of other musics. So via Vitamin, via Hussein, and I have my own sense of rhythm. So that even as Sense Emile as its first construction with all three of us, it's just real rhythmic. I mean, the first song we did was "Don't Think About It," which was a beat Derek already had mostly produced and going. He had 4-track, and once we kind of established ourselves as a group through, at Garfield, and we were skipping school, whatever, or even after school to just create. We're amassing, we're making a demo, we're amassing our first kind of collection of songs. And then we kind of realized, I'm also meeting other people. Derek already knew, I want to even say Michael Patterson Poetry was an original member of the Ghetto Children too. Because he stayed right behind where Fats was Catfish Corner now. Mm-hmm. His house was on the opposite side of the block, headed towards Madison. And he had a basement. He had an unfinished basement and he had this sequential tom drum machine that Derek used to mess with too. He had his kind of own little pre-production studio as well. And we made a couple of different joints down there too. It really was like the basement that like Outkast describes in Stankonia, like actual dirt, like a room that's down in the basement that's might have an outlet, but it really is, there's dirt in the corner, 3 feet of dirt or something like that. It's completely unfinished basement, but we're just down there tinkering with shit. And so yeah, I meet and we assemble Tribal like 92-ish, 92, 93. We graduate. That's where Tribal is born, not through Demisi. Or what was the other? Demisi would come on.
Demisi came in later.
Demisi came out because he went to O'Day, and so did Nathan Sinclair. As a matter of fact, that's what it was. It was Demisi was friends with Nathan, but I was also friends with Nathan. But Nathan went to O'Day.
Maybe they were venture capitalists or something. I don't know.
Yeah, back then it was kind of like, sure. Like if you thought where I grew up was nice, Nathan grew up behind, the house behind.
Absolutely.
His parent, it's upwardly mobile parents.
I think they were I think his dad was a lawyer or something like that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, some doctor, lawyer,
Yeah,
nuclear household. And even I'm a household of divorce, so it was dad up to a point, but they had mom and dad full. You know what I'm saying? So later on down, they're going to Garfield. They're going to O'Day. Basically, they had some bread, and our fans, just like us back then, the music we're making is my favorite music, and even to this day, it's still my favorite. Like the stuff that me and my guys make is my favorite music. Like
So, hey, we're officially at 2 hours, man. We're going to have to do a part 2, man. And this is a great segue of what happened next. I want to get into the evolution of DJ Topspin, you selling, your mixtapes. You became like a really dope entrepreneur. You still are. I also want to talk about just your fitness too, man. Like, your fitness journey.
Oh, okay. Yeah, we can talk about that for sure.
Fashion and fitness, because man, come on, man. Let's just keep it a buck, man. Like you made a transformation, like fitness wise too. I'm like, damn.
There's the entrepreneurial spirit. There's the mixtapes. There's also, you're talking about fashion. I used to sell clothes. My mom sewed us clothes back in the day when we were kids. Like pajamas and sew herself stuff. So
yeah, we gonna get into that on part 2, man. Because that's a whole.
I used to sew hats and sweatshirts and do all of these kind of entrepreneurial things, just as hip hop was growing entrepreneurially. I just was copying, what I was seeing around me and contemporaries and what would turn out to be competition / cronies of the industry.
Yeah, and then the second part, man, we'll get down to the plan of action, man. But it's growing late, man. We in the wee hours of the morning now, man. But it's been good. We'll pick up later, man.
Yep.
It's Speed Talk. Make sure you guys are sharing this, get those algorithms going. Topspin will put his information in if you want to donate what he got going on. I know you want to put your website. Hey, where can they find you, man?
It's the wild part. I don't even have a website of my own to this day.
I'm surprising.
I'm a product of all these other platforms, but there's a big
where can they find you though?
There's a big full circle thing that's going to happen. There's going to be an umbrella where everything that we do is under the umbrella.
Right. So where can they find you? I know that.
Right now, like Instagram, you could Instagram tells a story as far as like what my month's gigs will look like, what they look like in action. So I'm Topspin Instagram. So like TOPSP and then the word Instagram. But basically same sort of play on words. Topspin's Instagram, smushed together as one word. Topspin Instagram. That's Instagram, just at DJ Topspin on Twitter. If you type in, Topspin or Blendiana Jones on Facebook, both my personal and artist page comes up. So yeah, that's me.
Yeah, I put up there the.
Oops, Topspin, not Topspin stud. You got a spin stud, but after the A, you're gonna write whole gram. Topspinstagram, like Topspin's Instagram, smushed together as one word. Topspin Instagram.
I think I got it. Okay, hold on. Let's try that.
Yes, but you would have to put the @ in front of the T.
Yeah.
But Instagram on Topspin Instagram.
Yeah,
people should know that.
And then it's just Topspin on Facebook, right?
Yeah. DJ Topspin. If you type that into a search.
Okay, and then what you had on Twitter, man?
Twitter is just at DJ Topspin.
Okay.
But my site should be here soon. And that's the problem with too many AKAs. I have to commit to either Topspin or Blendiana Jones. and stuff. Certain stuff is better. Like Indiana Jones is
you can have the people vote for it, bro.
We'll see. But it will feature.
Hey man, I'm here to personally say, this is the guy for your wedding. This is the guy for your function. This is your guy for your club, for your venue. You know, this is the guy.
Sound design, and mood and professional mood making of various sorts.
Well, we out, man. It's make sure you share this. Make sure you comment it. It's been C Talk with Top Spin, and we out.